Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Ukraine strikes key Russian air assets using U.S. long-range missiles. Pentagon releases footage of coercive Chinese jets. Biden heads for Israel as Gaza death toll rises. Hundreds feared dead in Gaza hospital explosion amid conflicting accusations. Biden's Middle East mission was thrown into turmoil even before he left. Ukraine strikes key Russian air assets using U.S. long-range missiles. ABC. Ukraine has claimed to have carried out a highly destructive attack on Russian air assets using U.S. long-range missiles. President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the Ukrainian forces used U.S.-supplied Army tactical missile systems, ATACMS, to strike two air bases in Ukrainian territory now controlled by Russia. The U.S. has confirmed reports that it secretly provided Ukraine with the missile systems, which are capable of hitting targets up to 165 kilometers away. Russia's ambassador to the U.S. warned that the move would have serious consequences. Ukrainian special forces reported that 9 helicopters, an air defense missile launcher, runways, and other equipment had been destroyed. Pentagon releases footage of coercive Chinese jets. BBC. The Pentagon has declassified videos showing Chinese fighter jets coming dangerously close to U.S. aircraft in international airspace. Assistant Secretary of Defense Ely Ratner stated that there have been over 180 incidents since 2022 of coercive and risky actions by Chinese military planes that could potentially lead to unintended conflict. Biden heads for Israel as Gaza death toll rises. BBC. U.S. President Joe Biden is scheduled to visit Israel to express his solidarity and discuss war plans with its leaders. However, his visit has been complicated by a blast at a hospital in Gaza that is feared to have killed hundreds of Palestinians. The president sent his condolences to the victims. A planned visit to Jordan to meet Arab leaders was cancelled amid outrage over the deaths in Gaza. Biden will meet Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in a restricted bilateral meeting and the Israeli War Cabinet. Israel has asked the U.S. for $10 billion in emergency military aid. The cause of the blast is still being verified, with Hamas blaming Israel and Israel blaming Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Biden will be asking tough questions of Israeli officials during his visit. Hundreds feared dead in Gaza hospital explosion amid conflicting accusations. The Globe and Mail. An explosion at a hospital in Gaza has killed hundreds of people and threatens to worsen the humanitarian crisis in the region. The hospital, which was sheltering displaced people, was hit in an airstrike, according to the Gaza Strip's Hamas-controlled government, while the Israeli military blamed the blast on a failed missile launch by the Islamic Jihad group. The explosion occurred on the eve of U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to Israel, where he aims to reaffirm his support for the country's military campaign against Hamas. The incident is likely to increase the danger of the visit and could make Biden appear responsible for a protracted fight that he cannot control. Biden's Middle East mission was thrown into turmoil even before he left. CNN. President Biden's trip to the Middle East amid escalating violence between Israel and Hamas has been overshadowed by the news that a devastating explosion at a Gaza hospital has killed hundreds of people. The blast prompted Jordan to cancel the second leg of Biden's trip, where he was due to meet with key Arab and Palestinian leaders. Biden will now arrive in Israel on Wednesday with the region at risk of descending into a wider war. His mission represents the most intense engagement by a U.S. president in Middle East crisis diplomacy for many years. Biden hopes to apply U.S. power to contain the crisis while expressing solidarity with Israel and alleviating the plight of Palestinians in Gaza. The omens for Biden's trip have worsened with the cancellation of the Jordan leg, potentially presenting the president with an optics problem. He risks being seen in the region as siding with Israel without an opportunity to listen to Arab leaders' concerns about the humanitarian conditions faced by Palestinians under Israeli bombardment. Biden's credibility with Arab leaders depends on his capacity to secure humanitarian concessions from Israel and contain the worsening crisis. U.S. decision to send long-range missiles to Kiev a grave mistake. Russia's envoy. Reuters. Russia's ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov, has criticized Washington's decision to send long-range ATACMS missiles to Ukraine, calling it a grave mistake with serious consequences. The U.S. recently confirmed it had provided Ukraine with ATACMS missiles capable of hitting targets up to 165 kilometers away. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that his forces had used the missiles, striking two air bases in Ukrainian territory now controlled by Russia. Ukraine had repeatedly asked for the missiles and pledged not to use them inside Russia. The Kremlin has said U.S. supplies to Ukraine will not change the situation on the battlefield. Ahead of Biden visit, Israel's treatment of civilians looms large. Washington Post. The Biden administration is grappling with the dilemma of supporting Israel while also addressing the spiraling human toll and potential backlash from international supporters. This comes as Palestinian authorities report at least 500 people were killed in a strike on a crowded hospital in Gaza City on Tuesday, adding to a rising death toll that already stands above 2,000 since Israeli forces began airstrikes after Hamas' recent assault. This situation poses an additional challenge for President Biden as he travels to the Middle East to show solidarity with Israel. Biden has expressed his outrage at the hospital explosion and reaffirmed the United States' support for the protection of civilian life in conflict. As a result, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas canceled his planned meeting with Biden, and a summit with Egypt and Jordan was also called off. The Biden administration has declared the protection of civilian life and humanitarian assistance a priority, while refraining from criticizing Israeli tactics. However, they have pressed Israeli leaders to minimize civilian suffering by facilitating aid into Gaza. Biden, who is a longtime supporter of Israel, has pledged unqualified support for Israel's goal of obliterating Hamas. But he and his aides have warned against reoccupying Gaza and have emphasized that they expect Israel to adhere to the laws of war. The crisis complicates the Biden administration's ongoing effort to develop safeguards to prevent civilian deaths in wartime. Last year, the administration established an initiative to prevent, track and respond to civilian casualties caused by U.S. military operations and approved new guidelines for arms transfers that consider human rights and international humanitarian law. However, expanding U.S. military support for Israel now carries weighty considerations for the United States as reported Palestinian casualties mount. Israel has long been the top recipient of annual U.S. military aid, receiving more than $3 billion a year. Orban calls Russia's war against Ukraine a military operation in conversation with Putin. Yahoo! Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has referred to Russia's war against Ukraine as a military operation, echoing the Russian state's vocabulary. Orban made the comments during a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in China. The Hungarian opposition MP said in a Facebook post that the war in Ukraine is not a special military operation, it is a war. Orban has previously spread Russian narratives and opposed providing Ukraine with aid in countering Russian aggression. Hungary has also blocked Ukraine's NATO and EU integration over issues involving ethnic Hungarians in Ukraine's Zakarpattia Oblast. Ukraine fires long-range ATACMS to strike Russian depot and aircraft. Washington Post. Ukraine has fired 18 ATACMS long-range missiles at Russian targets, marking the first known use of the US-provided munitions by the Ukrainians, according to a senior Ukrainian military official. The missiles targeted Russian military aircraft and ammunition depots in occupied Ukraine, and were fired at occupied Berdyansk and Luhansk. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, thanked the US for providing the ATACMS missiles, which have a range of 100 miles or more. The ATACMS missiles used by Ukraine were armed with cluster bomblets. These strikes demonstrate Ukraine's ability to hit key targets deep inside Russian-held territory, which would allow them to damage Russian equipment and arsenals and kill or wound occupying Russian troops far from the front lines. The strikes could also boost Ukraine's efforts to retake territory from Russia in a slow and grinding counteroffensive. Russia had regularly deployed helicopters at the front line, so Ukraine is keen to strike Russian air capabilities. The US initially refused to provide ATACMS missiles to Ukraine due to concerns that the Ukrainians might use them to strike targets in Russia, but recently officials warmed to the idea of providing the missiles to Ukraine. Those living near Israel-Lebanon border face fear and resolve as fighting intensifies. The Globe and Mail. Tensions between Israel and Lebanon have escalated after a series of violent attacks. On Tuesday, at least 5 people were killed and 3 injured in clashes between the two countries. The violence has led Canada to issue warnings for its citizens to leave Lebanon. Despite the increase in hostilities, many people in Lebanese border communities are choosing to remain in their homes. They argue that the land is theirs, and their pride is more important than their lives. However, some are choosing to leave for fear of a war between Israel and Hezbollah, a militant group with whom some of the Lebanese people have relatives. Many people who have left their homes are now living in schools or moving to Beirut. However, some are choosing to stay in their homes, such as a dentist who believes his skills may be needed if bombs injure people, and a shoe shop worker who believes that the worst that could happen is that she dies. Dear viewers, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to provide you with a summary and analysis of the latest news. Let's dive in. In Ukraine, we have witnessed a highly destructive attack on Russian air assets using US long-range missiles. President Zelensky claims that Ukraine used US-supplied Army tactical missile systems to strike 2 air bases in Ukrainian territory controlled by Russia. This move has sparked serious consequences, with Russia's ambassador to the US calling it a grave mistake. It seems that tensions between Ukraine and Russia are escalating further. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has released footage showing Chinese fighter jets coming dangerously close to US aircraft in international airspace. These coercive actions by Chinese military planes have been occurring frequently and could potentially lead to unintended conflict. This is definitely a situation that needs careful monitoring. On another note, President Biden is heading to Israel amid the rising death toll in Gaza. A blast at a hospital in Gaza has killed hundreds of Palestinians, adding to the already dire humanitarian crisis in the region. President Biden's visit has been complicated by this tragic event, and it remains to be seen how he will navigate the situation and address the concerns of both Israel and the Palestinians. The explosion at the Gaza hospital has thrown President Biden's Middle East mission into turmoil even before he left. The cancellation of his planned visit to Jordan and the rising death toll in Gaza have put him in a difficult position. He must find a way to show solidarity with Israel while also addressing the humanitarian crisis and the concerns of Arab leaders. It's a challenging task, and we'll have to see how he handles it. Moving on, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's recent comments referring to Russia's war against Ukraine as a military operation have raised eyebrows. Orbán's choice of words aligns with the Russian state's narrative and has sparked criticism. It seems that Hungary's stance on the conflict and its opposition to providing aid to Ukraine are causing tensions between the two countries. Lastly, tensions between Israel and Lebanon have escalated, with violent clashes and attacks occurring. This has led Canada to issue warnings for its citizens to leave Lebanon. Despite the increase in hostilities, many people in Lebanese border communities are choosing to stay in their homes out of pride and a sense of ownership of the land. However, some are leaving for fear of a war between Israel and Hezbollah. The situation remains precarious, and the safety of the people in the region is a cause for concern. In conclusion, the events unfolding in Ukraine, China, Israel, and Lebanon are all significant and require careful attention. It's crucial for the international community to find peaceful resolutions to these conflicts and prioritize the safety and well-being of all involved. As always, I encourage you, our viewers, to share your thoughts and questions. What are your thoughts on these developments? Let's discuss. Thank you for tuning in to the 6 Degrees Briefing. I am Dr. Six, your guide in navigating the news of the 6 Degrees world. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.